Hello and welcome to another episode of the LendAPI Partner Podcast. Today, my guest is Gopal Swamy, who's the CEO and founder of Conductiv. Welcome to the podcast, Gopal.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Now, the first question for you is kind of your origin story. How did your business get started?
I love answering this question. Well, my last business actually was a mobile software company, but we were very, very good at data. And so I was working for a very large bank a few years ago, and they hired me because of my background with this data. They had a very specific problem, which was that the credit score wasn't always enough for them to decide whether to approve or decline a loan. So they needed additional data. And I led a team there that got this data, and it resulted in a lot more lending happening, which otherwise wouldn't have happened. And so from there, the idea of Conductiv was born, because combined with my experience from my last startup and the ability to use data, to aggregate it, to turn it into insights, that's really where Conductiv came from. And we're lucky enough now to be working with a number of credit unions and community banks and some fintechs who really have a mission not just to make loans, but to also to try and lend to folks with slightly lower or mid-level FICO scores.
So you actually already were doing it before you started the company, so you knew that it was working.
Correct. Yeah.
That's great.
Obviously, what we've built today is far different, but in its origins, conceptually,
yeah. Now, that is a great way to start from a real-life problem and a real-life experience. Now, what is the number one use case that Conductiv solves for?
Today, it's lending. Whether you're trying to find ways to lend deeper or make loans to individuals, consumers or small business owners, or even just business owners who may not have as high a FICO score, or their business financials may not be as clean as you want them to be. Or look, if you're just looking for a way to identify who to lend to, you don't have to have this mission of lending deeper. What we're doing is really making lending far more efficient and not adding any new risk to the process, while increasing the loan approval rates by up to 47%.
So you're providing additional data to make that credit decision, and therefore the organization can go beyond what they could otherwise do if they would only have the FICO score.
That's right. And we're now also working in account opening. So not just lending, but deposits. And we're even starting to work with the marketing arms of these lenders, because this data is so rich that it can be used to figure out how to target and how to market to the right customers and the right members.
Yeah, no, that is very powerful. Now, tell me your favorite customer story.
Yeah, I've sort of alluded to this before. We have a customer that's a credit union. They're about $750 million in assets. And they're a really wonderful credit union in the sense that, yes, they make loans to high FICO folks, but they also make loans to small businesses and to individuals with lower FICO scores. And so I think what they started out doing was using Conductiv to simply automate and digitize a process of gathering income and other kinds of data. But now what we've seen is that they're using us to gather cash flows and gather other kinds of data. And two, they're interested in looking at our AI, right? It's a linear regression model that looks at the data points that we get and tracks them correlates them with the outcomes of approval and default rate. And so that sort of AI-driven lending insights, that's the next piece, and that's what they're working on.
And so when they tell you how they get value out of your solution, what do they tell you?
Well, I think all of our customers say a similar thing. They say, hey, look, efficiency is important to us. So we're trying to make the member experience or the customer experience as efficient, as easy as possible. We don't want to have people come into the branch. We don't want to have people find a bunch of PDFs. That's number one. Number two, efficiency is important from the perspective of lending and loan operations. We don't want to have the employees chase down these proof of incomes, these stipulations. They use just different terms to talk about them. But that's a huge time waste, and they want that time back, 30% plus every week. And then, finally, they tell us, look, when we have these efficiencies, and we add on top of it the AI that gives us the insights, we can actually change our lending for the better without introducing new levels of risk.
Yeah, no, that is great. So with more insight, more efficient process, able to lend to people that might not have the FICO score that would justify it, but with your information, they can actually still make that decision and do that in a smart way.
And, even if the FICO score is good, there are many cases where our customers need to, in order to fund the loan, they need the documentation. So you can compress that time and reduce that effort to almost zero. You end up making a lot more loans and opening a lot more deposit accounts with far less friction.
That is great. Well, that's a great point maybe to wrap this up today. So thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's look forward to doing great things with LendAPI.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And this was another LendAPI Partner Podcast.